And he sat there the whole time we occupied this position with his flock, and his shepherd's crook, and his innocent face. I promoted this young woman to... This woman, her name was Zainab. She's a girl, not a woman, but Zainab, she was probably 10 or 12, something like that. And she'd followed me for a few days, as a matter of fact, on our patrols. And one morning she handed me these flowers that she picked. And she would run by the truck, even at night, she'd run by it. And I was so concerned that I was going to run her over. So I promoted her to sergeant in her own language amongst all these teenage boys, and they all laughed and walked away. I gave her one of my chevrons off the collar of my shirt. And she liked that. I liked that too. That was a nice moment. One of the notions that our command tried to get the Marines to buy on to was that if we could convince the kids that we were good, if we could help them understand our presence and that it was a positive thing, that we weren't evil and that we weren't destroyers and that we were liberators, that when their generation comes to power, that we'll start to see the fruits of our labor in their actions. It was a city in chaos. Folks were trying to put their lives back together, and there was no electricity and there was no water, and it was very tense. It was becoming more dangerous, but again, nothing like it is today. I found myself wondering, how is this good for these kids? Yes, their oppressor is gone, but how is this good for these kids, and what is going to be done to help secure their future? I have yet to see all those good works come to fruition. I don't see that that's happening yet. I think there's more for them than what they're going through now. I don't know that the best way to have helped that generation was to take over their country. I don't know that. But I still held on to this notion that this was still an act of liberation, that what we were doing was this violence that we had unleashed upon this nation and this people had a just cause, and it was the liberation of a people. But I lost that about 6 months after I got out. I was actually watching a film. There was a woman, some footage of an Iraqi woman, an old woman, and she's crying, and she's angry, and she's sad, and she has no idea what's happened. She does, but she has no idea why. Her village is destroyed. It looked like one we certainly could have been through. I mean, they all did, but she was asking why it had been destroyed, why the bombs fell from the air. And it wasn't planes that destroyed her village. It was artillery. It was obvious. So it could very well have been my battalion that destroyed this woman's village. It could have very well been our guns, our munitions that killed the entirety of her family. And she was asking why. And I had no answer for her. It felt like she was speaking directly to me. And I couldn't answer. A lot of guys could have answered. Because you were being oppressed. Because this is the right thing to do in the grand scheme of things. This is the way it's supposed to be, and some people have to die. And a lot of guys would feel good about saying that to that woman It might have been difficult for them to say it to her face, but that's the answer that they would have given, and they would have lived with that and felt comfortable telling their children that. I couldn't do that. So that's kind of when I lost the thread of that I was hanging on to, justifying our actions in my own head and heart. Iraq has to be Iraq, and it has to be a place of Iraqis and by Iraqis and for Iraqis. And right now it has a feel of America. American input, American guidance, American this, American that, and it's all this military feel, or this, it's being led by people who are trained to be violent, whether they be private security guards or American military, and it's not a place that seems to me to be full of hope. When I look down the road in Iraq, I don't see an end to violence. When I look down the road in Iraq, I see civil war. And I don't want to see that. But I see us training a military in preparation for civil war. I think the police force, the Iraqi army that we're training, lacks the will to see that kind of war through to the end and be victorious. And I wonder why, really. Why they lack that will, why they lack that drive that every Marine has. They have the will to fight to the death when their president says, go, do it. Because they're Americans. And their American leader said, you're going to do this because your country is calling you to do this the American way. It's bred into us in a way that soldiers we're training in Iraq, they don't have that background. They don't have generations of being called that way. Their calling is a different one. Their motivations are different. What they have the will to do is different. And I feel like we're training them to fit a mold that is not Iraqi. That we're trying to shove this will to be free in the likeness of democratic American freedom down these people's throats, and they don't even want it. It's a very different culture. It's a very different people, and somehow we're trying to make them American and force our notions of democracy and our notions of freedom and our notions of liberty and human right down the throats of a culture that is inherently different from us, from our culture. And I fear that it is truly a losing battle because of that. That because the Iraqi people never found that fire within themselves, or had yet to come to a place where that fire was bursting out of them, that they're not going to get there until we're gone. And I want to believe that the administration has the best of intention. Even with the best of intentions, we're trying to do something we shouldn't be doing in the end.